I will call the Fiscal Committee to order for Friday, November 21st. We understand that President Carson is on her way. We'll welcome Senator Reardon to replace Senator Rosenwald and Senator Pearl to replace Senator Birdsell. The first item is acceptance of the minutes of October 17th.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Representative Leishman. Any changes or omissions or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
I'd like to abstain
And-
for not
and
being there. This is
Three
Representative Mooney.
abstentions. Three? One, two, three. Okay, we
voted in favor, fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
9 minus, yeah, here she is. Okay. That was her.
No.
All right. So there is a consent calendar that goes from tab 3 through tab 5. We have a request to remove items under tab 4, item 25282, and under tab, under tab 4, it's item 25282. Under tab 5, we'll remove 25279. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the rest of the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second,
Motion and a second to adopt the rest of the consent calendar. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Consent, the remainder of the consent calendar is adopted. We'll move to tab 4 and look at number 282. Or
Yes.
282 under tab 4. And we have the Administrative Services Commissioner here.
Hi, I'm Charlie Arlinghouse. I'm the Commissioner of Administrative Services, and with me is Ted Cupper, who's our Director of Public Works, and he's an engineer, and I'm not.
Thank you. Senator Reardon is recognized for a question on 282.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner and Ted, for taking my question. I hope it doesn't need the expertise of an engineer to answer the question. So this project sits in the middle of my district, in the middle of a residential neighborhood. I've had lots of questions about what happened, why the head construction had stopped, and what the issue was, and when it's going to start again, and I think it already has started again. If you could provide me, this is all new to me, just a little bit of what's going on there.
So fortunately, this is a very concrete issue.
No pun intended.
Yes, but I'll give you sort of a short version, and if we need to talk about micropiles and 80 kips and that kind of stuff, Ted will jump in. But the short version is when you're building a big, complicated thing, you do a lot of testing along the way to make sure that you didn't do anything you shouldn't, because everything is literally built on top of everything else. And so we did a lot of testing on things like the piles and some of the concrete work that was done, and found design errors and design flaws. And we stopped because you don't just go, yeah, I bet it's okay. You decide to remediate and change the design and come up with other design changes that will make everything all right. In doing that, there was some stoppage on one part of the project. There's a lot of other pieces of the project that have continued. But on the sort of more obvious piece of the project, that work, in the hole in the ground, so to speak, stopped. We went back and forth. The item before you is basically a settlement from the insurance company for the engineers. And it will go in large part to making everything right and making the design work. Is that close?
That wasn't a convincing shrug, but that's good. What's the estimated timeline left in this project?
Right now, they're projecting completion of the project in fall of '27.
Thank you very much.
And they're planning on restarting the project probably next week. They'll start test piles.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions from the committee?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Mooney. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion is adopted. Moving on to tab 5, number 279. HHS. Okay. Representative Reardon is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner Weaver and Commissioner Arlinghouse for entertaining this question. So the item indicates that it is a federally required element of this building project, and it feels like it's a long ways into the game to be funding a federally required element, and I was just wondering if you could speak to that.
Sure. Good morning, Lori Weaver, Commissioner, Health and Human Services. Thank you for the question. This project, as we started out with 21 million years ago to be able to build it, actually ended up costing us quite a bit more. And so we had to get really innovative, right, Charlie, with how we bid it out. So that basically meant that we didn't have enough money to do the project. Should money become available, we would do add alternates. So any opportunity to add back with funding, we have. So we've been before this committee a couple of times before with that. And I think we sort of signaled last time that we may be back. This is the last of the ARPA money that is able to fund, at least for this piece here. One of the things that we did this past legislative session was to lift the restriction that it was only ARPA funding that could be used to build the facility. And that would allow us to look at general funds or capital projects to be able to tackle all of the things that didn't get in. So we're fortunate that we had just enough to squeak by, that we can add this in at this time.
I will commend you for pulling a capital stack together over time, which is a really difficult thing to do. That is really exceptional. Thank you.
Senator Waters for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So could you talk a little bit about, you have the completion date noted here, and our budget provision for the sale of the existing land to go towards the settlement fund. We had hoped to get to be able to do in the second year of the plan. So how is this completion date looking?
We're going to arm wrestle over the microphone.
I think there's two parts to that. One for probably each of us to answer. I think in terms of the funding that we have
To build the facility, sorry. We're not counting on the funds of any sale of property at Hampstead for the funding of the facility itself. So where we're at now, we have what we need to reach our occupancy date of about a year from now to be able to do that. So it doesn't impact the build.
Thank you.
On the sale of the Sununu Center property itself, the Manchester property, if you will, I'm going to use that description. That's going forward. The process of selling that property is going to be enormously complicated. I think everyone knew that going in. It's a complicated property. It's in Manchester. It's in a big city, and there's all kinds of stuff going on with that. And in addition to that, we have to be honest, no earthly clue how much we might get for that property. I mean, there are ranges, but I don't want anyone to think that any number you've heard or might have heard has any basis in calculation. They're all speculative. We're about to release an RFP for a broker for the property. We'll select a broker. That's not a dramatic starting gun that happens. It's just a necessary thing. We'll work with the broker on a process. We'll receive proposals at some point, and then work toward a closing. We're working with the governor's office on how to evaluate those things and what would then happen. Governor and council would have to approve the sale. In other large, complicated campus sales recently, exactly what they did was relatively unpredictable, and I imagine it always will be. And so we'll do that. Our goal would be to not wait until everyone's moved out to figure out the sale, but we won't close while there are residents still on the property.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions?
Move to approve.
Okay. Senator Gray moves to approve item 25279. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second, and any further discussion? I think it was Senator Reardon was the second. Yes. There's no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Item is adopted. Okay, moving on to tab 6 and the regular calendar. First item is 25280, and that deals with Department of Administrative Services.
Move to approve.
Okay, motion to approve. Is there a second? Just a comment, had we gone with the House Ways and Means estimates for this budget, we may not have needed to have this item. Any further discussion?
I'd like to comment on your comment. The Senate in the budget process worked very hard to keep the amount of money that was coming out of the rainy day fund lower. Right now, the estimate is nearer 47 million than 87 million, but because the audit has not been done, we're going with the higher estimate now, but we will only take out that amount of money that is required. If I went with the House's estimate, when they sent the budget over to me, it was $140+ million that was coming out of the rainy day fund. So I do take exception to your comment about going with the House's thing. It would have had no effect on this. This was the true up of last year and not anything to do with the revenue estimates or whatever that happened this year.
The money that came out of the budget to begin with was as a result of the fact we did not have a committee conference on the previous budget. So again, it was with the Senate estimates rather than the House Ways and Means estimates. And that's why it was off then and it's off now. Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, you ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is adopted. All right, moving on to tab 7. 25278, Health and Human Services. Any discussion on this item? Representative Leishman has a question? That's the next one, okay.
Move to approve.
Okay. Senator Gray moves to approve item 25278. I think the second was Senator Waters, seconds. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That item is adopted. Moving on to tab 8, item 25272. I think there's some questions on this one, so Representative Leishman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question, or maybe a couple of questions. First of all, I was just curious about the RFP process. There were like 9 vendors that met the requirement for the RFP. Ultimately, due to latitude in the RFP process, I'm guessing you reduced them to 3. And I'm just, I guess, concerned that we don't seem to have anybody more local in this process. I believe the person or the company you chose is from Michigan. And I noticed on the scoring sheet that they scored relatively high as far as being available, but they're in Michigan. So I'm kind of curious how the whole process works.
Thank you, Representative, for that question. Let me just introduce myself. I am Donald Crease, the consumer advocate. Our office represents the interests of residential utility customers in our state. pursuant to RSA 363, Section 28. Let me think about your question for a second. So we put this RFP out last spring, thinking about the different extra help that we needed in participating in rate cases at the Public Utilities Commission. And we identified two broad categories, and we reserved the right in the RFP to pick and choose depending on how we concluded as time went on where we would like to focus our effort in those rate cases. So there was, I think, a fair degree of flexibility that we reserved for ourselves in that particular RFP process. And in this case, one of the two categories that we were thinking about has to do with return on equity in utility rate cases. And we decided, based on the way the PUC decided the Eversource rate case in July, that we weren't going to pursue that issue in the rate cases that are going to be covered by the work that we were seeking through this RFP. So I simply decided to eliminate from contention those respondents who only proposed to do ROE, return on equity, work for us. And so that's the reason you saw a bunch of the consultants drop out of contention. So the other broad category that we were looking at, or are looking at, has to do with, I guess, the nuts and bolts of combing through all the spreadsheets in the rate case, having to do with the operating costs that are embedded in rates. And the firm that we chose out in Michigan is a firm that we've worked with before, and we know that they do both a really good and thorough job of that, and they're also really efficient. Their price is very competitive. There simply are no consulting firms in New Hampshire that do this kind of work. There are plenty of experts that help with utility rate cases in New Hampshire. They're all on the staffs of either the Department of Energy, the Public Utilities Commission, or in some cases us. It's almost been a decade of service for me as consumer advocate. I have only received one in-state response to an RFP that I have put out, and the person who responded to that RFP is now a member of my staff. So the expertise is hard to find, and when I find it, I grab it. In that case, I just eventually found a way to get that person onto my staff, and he now works for me. I hope that was somewhat responsive to your questions.
Question,
Further
Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So you mentioned the 6 respondents that you eliminated from the process. Were they contacted to say there's been a change in what we want you to review so they could respond to that?
I told them that that is what I had decided to do. I didn't invite them to respond further. In a couple of cases, there were respondents who, because of the breadth of what they're able to do, were able to say, well, we can provide you with both financial accounting services and ROE services. And so those respondents weren't dropped out of contention. But again, the consultant that we chose, I think, offered a really competitive price.
Just one further.
question?
So if I recall, 2 of the respondents, you said you couldn't find anybody from New Hampshire. I certainly understand that, but I believe 2 were from Massachusetts, so they weren't contacted to say that the scope of this work has changed?
No, their response to our RFP was that they were interested only in the ROE work. And so when I decided not to engage anybody for any ROE work, they simply dropped out of contention. I didn't call them and say, would you like to change your proposal and offer to do other work for us? One of the 2 firms that you're talking about is a firm that we have a longstanding relationship with and we have worked with before. They could have, when they put in their initial RFP, offered to do a broader scope of work, and they chose not to for whatever reason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And with respect to the fact that the consultants are in Michigan, almost all of this work will proceed remotely. If necessary, and it's part of the contract, we can cause them to fly from Michigan to Concord to appear in person at the PUC hearing at the end of the rate case if that becomes necessary.
Further questions from the committee? We've already had a sizable increase in electric rates, I believe. Is that true?
There is constant upward pressure on electric and gas rates here in New Hampshire, definitely.
Will this contract project any effect on the rates that will have?
Our job is to make sure that the rate increases that the PUC authorizes are only those that are necessary and are favorable to customers. So we try to make sure that rate increases are as limited as they can possibly be. Rates do tend to go up over time because the utilities are in the same inflationary economy that the rest of us are. And so I'd love to be able to come here, Representative Weiler, and say, I will do my best to make sure there are rate decreases. I think that would be a reckless promise. I'd love to be able to make it. I will do my best. I would love to see rate decreases.
As would I. Anything further? Senator Waters moves to approve item 272. Is there a second? Second, Senator Gray. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. One, you wish to be recorded as a negative, Representative Leishman. Okay, the item is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to tab 9, item 25261.
Move to approve.
Senator Gray moves to approve. Representative Leishman seconds. Is there any further discussion? President Carson.
Is there someone from the Judicial Council?
Good morning, Jay Bucky.
And thank you very much for coming. I'm sorry. Thank you very much for coming here this morning. How many times do you anticipate coming back to fiscal for money? I think we had this discussion last month when the judicial came in and asked for a lot of money. We talked about the budgeting process. And quite frankly, I was surprised to see a request for more money. And why didn't you ask for this last month when you were in front of us? So is there a way to deal with this, that we can anticipate this so we could budget for this in a better manner than doing this through the fiscal committee?
Yes, certainly I think there is. To give a bit of context on this request in particular, the reason it didn't come into the last request is for a different budget line. Essentially, these funds in particular are for an item that was added quite late in the budget process upon request from the judicial branch. Essentially, this is a new budget obligation that the Judicial Council has not had previously. It was put into our budget, and the amount that we had available for that simply wasn't sufficient. So that's why we're here on this particular request. In terms of the Judicial Council's budget overall, I can imagine that I would be here asking for more funds at least 2 more times for 2 different budget lines.
May I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Follow up.
Thank you. So the Judicial Council was given this additional duty by the judicial branch, or were they given it by the legislative branch?
By the law changed from the legislative branch,
Okay.
but my understanding was that the change was due to request from the judicial branch to basically change the payment responsibility for these cases from the judicial branch, who had previously been paying for these, to my agency, the Judicial Council. So essentially, the payment obligation went from the judicial branch to the Judicial Council.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I maybe can make a request here. When we get these kinds of requests that reflect legislation that was filed, can the agencies refer to the bill that
would be helpful.
I think that would be very helpful. So it'll help us understand that this was passed by the legislature, and so it's just about tracking the costs.
Certainly.
Keep track. So that's just a suggestion.
Absolutely.
And if we need to do something legislatively, I'm sure we can find something to do it. I think it might help the process a little.
Good point.
Go a little smoother. Thank you very much for answering my questions.
Certainly.
Director Bucky, I think I read somewhere in the newspaper that there were 150 people requesting public defense, and 80 of them were in jail. Does that sound accurate?
Yes.
Is there a problem recruiting the public defenders?
Yes, there's at least two problems currently right now. The problem systemically is that the public defender's office, as you're aware, is a nonprofit organization and doesn't have the funding currently to hire everybody to really fully staff its agencies. And compounding that issue is the fact that Massachusetts is on a rather large hiring spree for public defenders in that state. So they are, while we're trying to hire people, we can't quite fill all the office spots. They're at the same time aggressively recruiting from some of our southern offices, specifically Nashua and Manchester. So we're losing attorneys there. And there's also an issue recruiting private attorneys who take conflict cases and cases that the public defender is close to. We have issues recruiting those attorneys as well. Just, unfortunately, New Hampshire, well, either fortunately or unfortunately, New Hampshire has the lowest number of attorneys per capita in New England. So depending on how you look at that, the one thing that does is it makes it harder for us to get lawyers to take these cases.
Do we do any kind of recovery once people have been cleared and are no longer in jail and can get employment? Is there any kind of payment they pay, even if it's low? Is there any sort of payment you get from people that have been defended?
My understanding is the office that handled that previously, the Office of Cost Containment, that was essentially abolished at the end of last fiscal year.
I guess they were not paying for themselves. So.
That's my understanding. Yes, my understanding is that the amount that was being spent on recoupment was essentially more than what was being recovered.
I think I recall that. Thank you. Any other questions? How does the committee wish to proceed with the item? We already have a motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Item is adopted. Good luck on finding staff.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to miscellaneous. I think we might have had some questions on the information items. There's nothing under, there is something under tab 10. We've moved item 25266 to under tab 10. It wasn't there previously. 25266, dealing with state treasurer's report for the release and distribution of the 529 plan for the unique college investment plan. Representative Leishman moves the item. Second by Senator Waters. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The item is adopted. Okay, moving on to tab 11, the informational items. Any questions, anything anybody wishes to pursue on the items? I think I had some questions on Senator Waters.
Yeah, I had on 265, please.
255, 265.
265, yeah.
I think I had a note on that one that would be some questions. Okay. And that's item revenue administration. Okay. This is revenue administration. Senator, thank you. Senator Waters has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for taking my question. So, obviously we're all watching the monthly revenue reports and so on and so forth, and have noticed the pretty large amount on the interest and dividends tax refund. And so the question was, what do you anticipate going forward? Is this the bulk of what we're going to see, or do you think we're going to see subsequent amounts?
Thank you for the question. I'm Jennifer Ramsey. I'm Tax Policy Counsel with the Department of Revenue Administration. Looking at the next quarter, preliminarily, we're also looking at, through today, about $21 million in I&D refunds for this current quarter. That looks like it will be the last of it. The credit carry forwards for that tax are down to about 1.7 million for tax years 23 and prior. The returns for tax year '24, we have processed most of. They were due November 15th on extension. We've processed most of them. There was very little as of yesterday, like $50,000 in overpayments for tax year '24. So we are nearly through with the refunds related to the IND repeal, but that is what you're seeing in the report.
I mean,
Further
follow up.
questions?
So just to clarify in my own mind, so we saw 10 million, more or less, this month. And is that 21 million mentioned on top of that, or is that 10 million part of that?
You're talking about for quarter one?
Yeah.
We had, for IND, about 4 million in refunds for IND. And then in quarter two, including the 10 that you've
Yeah.
seen, that is within the 21.
Okay, so that's inclusive. Thank you. I appreciate that, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, obviously, we're watching our deficit, and you know, speaking of the rainy day funds, this is what we're trying to keep a count on. But at least we have some estimate that's another 11 million we can anticipate. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else on the committee have any questions? Not Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, this is information, thank you. All right, the next one I had a question on was 25-274 by Representative Leishman, is that correct?
Thank you,
Anybody else
Mr.
have
Chairman.
anything else further before that? All right, we'll look at item 25-274 from Environmental Services.
I understand from Mr. Kane that there is no one here from DES to entertain questions, so I'll submit my questions through Mr. Kane.
Okay, so that will go to the agency on Aquatic Resource Mitigation Fund. Anything further on any of the items in the information? Seeing none, we come down to the date of the next meeting. The fourth Friday is December 19th, which is a traditional meeting that we would put. 11 o'clock seems to have worked out fairly well for people. Is that still a good one?
I won't be here, but
Is that fine with the other members over here?
Thank you.
All right, we will set it for December 19th at 11. Probably right here in this room. Is there anything further to come before the Fiscal Committee on this day?
No.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second? Motion to adjourn, and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. We are adjourned. That's kind of record time.
Nice job, Ken.